the show started. I was gonna
Yeah,
ask
let's
you.
do it. Let's do it.
Hola Dodgers, man. Dude, I'm so excited to talk to you. I've been checking you out on. Welcome to the Capital Ranger Show. I've been checking you out on LinkedIn, and I can't wait to get into your story. I'm a big fan of Rod Cleef. He's going to be in town here, and I saw that you did a podcast with him. Tell me about
Hmm.
your background, and you're a podcaster yourself. I want to find out everything about you. I know very little about you, but you told me you're from the UK, right? When
Yep.
did you come to the United States?
Oh man, I think it's been about 6 years now, I would say. First and foremost, I'm a huge fan of Rod as well. Rod is a great guy. I think Zach is inviting him over to Phoenix. And Zach has been on my show as well, and he's been telling me to try to come to his meetup. So hopefully that would happen, and I'll get to meet you as well in person when I come over there. So I definitely can't wait for that. So my wife essentially got an internship here in the United States, in Disney, Orlando, Florida. And she's like, "Hey, you should come check this out. It's really nice. Yeah, in the States. Never been to the States, so I was like, yeah, why not? Jumped on the plane. I just kind of really remembered. I like to take the window seat. I'm a window seat guy. And as
Yeah.
I was about to touch down, I was just looking at Orlando, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is really beautiful. Like this place I'm going to land to is just amazing. That was my first thought. And of course, when I landed, I just loved Florida and Orlando. I was like, oh my God, the United States is beautiful. Went to Orlando, went to Disney. I was like, oh my God, this is nice. So my wife and I was started kind of thinking like, hey, maybe we could move here. And we did 2 years later, I think. 2 or so years later, we moved, and kind of like the journey started. But I like to always tell the story, though. When we moved over, my wife obviously got a job first, and obviously I tried to get myself a green card as well, and kind of get into the system. So shortly thereafter, I got a job as well. I mean, there's a whole story to that. Maybe I'll touch on it. Um, and I guess we're living like the American dream, right? Wake up, go to work, come back home, sleep, wake up, go to work, come back home, sleep, wake up, go to work. Traffic. Um,
Okay.
and it depends on where you live in the US. That traffic could be everyday traffic. And I was thinking to myself, is this it? Like, am I just gonna do this and die? Like, wow, that's pretty vanilla, right? There's gotta be something else. There's gotta be another format here. It can't just be this. So I kind of kept thinking, but at the time as well, doing other things. There was a time I was actually preparing to go do an MBA at Harvard. I went to Harvard. I visited Harvard. Went to Penn as well, Wharton. And I was thinking of doing an MBA. Actually, I was preparing for the GMAT at the time as well. But there's just a lot going on then for me. I just felt like there had to be something else. And obviously, for me, I was thinking, maybe an MBA would be a really good challenge for me, getting to an Ivy League. I did that for a bit. But kind of during this time, a friend of mine called me and said, "Hey, Ola, I'm going to be in Dubai in a few weeks. I'm meeting with some investors. You've helped me with my business before. Can you please meet me there, and we can, you can help me with my business?" So when I got that call, I did what every wise man does. I prayed about it, and I asked my wife. And my wife was like, "Well, why do you guys just FaceTime? Have you guys heard of a tool called Skype? Maybe Zoom?" I was like, yeah, I know them very well. But what if I go on this trip and I learn one or two things, right? And we kind of went a little bit back and forth. But long story short, I was on the plane to Dubai. Obviously, got to Dubai. I did not get picked up in a Ferrari limousine, or I wasn't quad biking in the desert with some rich sheikhs. We were just essentially in a pretty standard, hotel room for 3 days, kind of masterminding on my friend's business, which is a real estate business in the UK. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, wow, this is interesting, right? But I want to kind of rewind a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I think I heard somewhere recently that most people, I think the number was 60% of people in life are observing. They're just kind of observing life, just, kind of observing. And I think I heard out of that 60%, I think about 20 are actually paying attention to what's actually happening. I mean, so the 40%, they have no clue. They just go to work and come home and sleep and do it again. They have no clue what's going on. 60% are observing. I think another 20% actually paying attention, like, wow, there's a pattern here. If you do this, this happens, And then I think 2.5% of that, of those people actually take action and actually do something and have the discipline to actually go through. The reason I mentioned the story is when my friend called me, I could have said, no, go away. Why would I meet you in Dubai? No, that I wouldn't even get to my wife or to God. I wouldn't even pray. It would just be end of story. No, I wouldn't be on your show today, obviously, if I didn't do that. So that's why I mentioned that when you get opportunities, they're never going to come in a, red box with ribbon around it, right? It's not going to be a grandiose event. It could be a phone call. It could be an invitation to a meetup. It could be an invitation to a conference. When you go look at that conference and it's $700 or $500, don't just go, no. Think, what if I learn one thing? Okay, that's why I bring up that story. In any case, I was on my way back from Dubai on the plane, and I was thinking, maybe I could do this in the US, right? He had a pretty niche real estate business though, but I was like, maybe I could do some kind of real estate. I had no clue, right? Got back, consulted with my very good information source, Google. And as I was Googling, this same website kept coming up, Bigger Pockets. I was like, well, what is this place? Let's go there. You know me, I'm curious. Let's go check this place out. Got on Bigger Pockets, got on the podcast that I listened to the podcast. I was paying attention again. Everybody kept talking about this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm like, who is this Rich Dad Poor Dad person? Of course, curious, went to Amazon, bought the book. I read the book, and the best way to describe what happened to me was I felt like my brain got an uppercut, right? And I was essentially thinking, oh my goodness, this guy he stole my idea, right? Because this is what I've been trying to articulate, right? And this guy stole my idea and he's got in a book, I don't know, published in 1991, whenever it was published. This is what I've been trying to say. This is what I'm feeling, right? Like there's gotta be more, right? And that book kind of started my journey. And, I think it was about 3 to 6 months after that, we bought our first building, which is a multifamily building in a Class A area in Baltimore. And, my wife moved in and, we did some renovations, we moved in and, kind of fast forward, I think it was just a fateful night, my wife and I, just at home, doing what lovers do. Cooking and basically I was telling her hey, I feel like I have a lot of money in my account. We haven't really done anything different apart from buying this new place, but I feel like I have a lot of money. Of course, we got our first rent, right? We had 2 renters at the time. And I was like, oh my God, what if we could do this like a ton, right? What if we could buy more of this kind of property and do this at scale? I mean, we're going to have a lot of money and then we can do what we really care about, which is helping others, building wealth. So that kind of launched our journey into building Dwellyng.com, our company. Here's the t-shirt. I'm a branding guy, so you can check us out, Dwellyng.com. And that's kind of how the journey began.
So Dwellyng where did you come up with that name? What does it mean?
That is a fantastic question. So, of course, dwelling with the ing means a dwelling, a place of stay. Yeah, but of course, that's not where the name came from. I just wanted to, get something that related to, of course, housing and real estate. But dwell has been mentioned a lot. I think I counted in the Bible. So I really like that. Dwell always gets a negative connotation. If you dwell, you're dwelling on the no, it's actually a place of peace, right? And Lynn is actually my wife's name. My wife is Winna Lynn. So I just kind of combine the two. Obviously, my wife is very important to my life. I've been with her for almost 15 years now. If you see my wife's picture, you might think I met her when she was 10, but she's not. She just looks really young. So I kind of combined that and came up with Dwellyng.com, of course.
That's really cool, man. I definitely want to dive into raising some capital, but before we go there, because I'm very fascinated about a lot of stuff in your story. Take me back. You were in your MBA program. You said that you did that for a little bit. Does that mean that you started and then didn't finish?
No, I was preparing to go do that. Of course, my trip to Dubai changed my approach, and the GMAT was extremely difficult. I mean, I don't know if anybody has tried to do the GMAT. I obviously yes, it's extremely difficult. Anyways, but when I heard of that, I was like, oh my goodness, maybe I could just do this instead of trying to go, get into debt. I mean, I already have a master's degree, so obviously that would have been my second master's degree. So I was like, maybe I can just do this instead, which is kind of what I did. And the GMAT was excruciatingly difficult.
It wasn't too bad for me. So I got past the GMAT, and it wasn't with flying colors, but I got through it. And then I actually started my MBA program at University of Phoenix. Realized it was way too easy for me to get an A in the class, and I didn't like that because I'm used to organic chemistry, where you're up at 7 in the morning taking a class that you're struggling incredibly hard to get a C, And so I was like, this is too easy. So I transferred to ASU and started the MBA program, thinking that I could be an entrepreneur from this. I mean, the word business is right there, Master of Business Administration. But then I realized that they were teaching people to be 80 hours a week workers.
Employees.
I dropped out halfway through because that's just not my interest. I've always been entrepreneurial at heart, so I didn't know about that. That's very cool. So when did you get into this? You started out with rentals and then you moved into syndication. What was that process like? I know that you had the mindset to do it, right? But what was the technical things that you had to do? You had to go learn about it first, podcast Bigger Pockets, but then you started to have to create documents, right? And get advice from legal people. For somebody that wants to go through this process and get into syndication, they're going to have to do this. And I don't know that people realize that it's challenging, or even how to start or who to talk to. So what was that process like for you?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I mean, first and foremost, to do anything well in life, first and foremost, I don't want to go hard on mindset. We were just talking before the show started. We had an event this past weekend, the Legacy World Accelerator, and I spoke for about 3 hours, and I was just telling folks that mindset is actually where it all starts. So for the purpose of your show and your question, let's just like leave down the side for to start. But it's pretty much a big part for the success we've dwelling and thus far, right? So when I got back, I went on this kind of almost obsessive learning, humble process of I don't know anything, right? Everything I've learned, heard from this, from all the way from when I was young to now doesn't mean anything. Just tell me new things. I'm willing, I'm humble. So when we brought our first duplex and I saw that little tiny bit of success, I was like, oh, wow, I got to do this well. So I had two options. I can go continue on my obsessive way of doing things, or I can just look for someone that's done it and just kind of like, that's what Rich Dad Poor Dad talks about. You can cheat in real life, meaning in school, you're not allowed to look at somebody else's paper, but in real life you can. So I quickly got a mentor. I partnered with a mentor, and he's a great mentor, and learned a ton about multifamily syndication, apartment syndication, and that really helped me. And during that process, of course, we have a group of apartment syndicators that really helped me to connect and partner with others who are trying to do what I'm trying to do. So that way, I mean, we have a long list of things to do to get to take down assets, right? So I don't have to do all that, what we call a GP responsibility. So we can share that, right? So that really helped us to get things done because we coalesced, right? I wasn't trying to do everything by myself, right? So partnering was a big deal, and mentoring was an even bigger deal. So people, always ask this question: should I pay for a mentor? You see everyone, Bigger Pockets or whatever. I paid for a mentor, and I don't even like show the figures of I'm paid, but the reality is we forget that we've paid for education and we've paid for know-how since the day we've been born, for the most part anyway, right? That even private schools exist, right? You can go to public school, you can go to private school, right? So I'm a big believer of that. And you start to understand that when you start to become successful. It's like now I've got people coming to me saying, oh, mentor me. But the reality is I have a baby, a 2.5-year-old baby. She loves attention. I have a wife. So does she. So you have to be very careful. I have some people, I classify two types of people in terms of people that want to partner with you. Or sorry, people that trying to reach out to you, but they don't really have great intentions. Number one are time vampires, and number two are value leeches. So you have to be careful, very, very careful as a person, a relatively successful person. You have to be careful how you expend your time throughout the day, right? So I'm very careful to just give people FaceTime, right? If it doesn't have any benefit for our company dwelling in the long term, then it's, it just doesn't make sense. So for me, if you're trying to do this, you definitely need the mentoring because you just get plugged in into all those technical processes that you just mentioned, right? And then you get access to that mentor's network, right? It's multifamily syndication is radically different to flipping a house, right? Anybody can go down the street, buy a house, flip it, right? For most part, relatively difficult if you don't know what you're doing, of course, but you can get that done, right? But buying a 100-unit apartment building, it's just a different play. It's not harder, but it's just a different play. So I think people really, really have to understand that. And it's a team sport. You cannot do it by yourself. And I mentioned this in my event. I mentioned a year. Even if you're a Saudi prince with gazillion, dollars, you still need a team of people, lawyers, PM, you still need that anyway. Your money still has to gather a team. So, and of course, most of us are not Saudi princes. So we need the partners and we need the mentors.
People all day long will pay $100,000 or more for a 4-year college degree that they don't ever even apply in life, and then when they consider investing 30, 50, let's say even on the high scale, the same price that they would pay for college, they're just not even close to willing to do it. And I think part of that could be because they would be perceived by the people as foolish, right? Even though nobody perceives them as foolish for going out and spending a bunch of money on a degree, a college degree. So it's kind of mind-blowing to me when I look at the mindset of people. I have a cousin who just posted yesterday on Facebook, who loves their career? And, the manner of the question itself is loaded in such a way where there's not even option to hear about an opportunity for business. Like, why isn't the question all who loves their business? And I'm thinking about this going, man, there's just society is so zoned into, work for a living and do that thing that you just call the rat race, right? Robert Kiyosaki talks about it all the time, where you wake up, go to work, go to bed, wake up, go to work, go to bed, pay your bills. And then they're not focused on the creating assets that'll give them the freedom to do things that they actually want to do in life, man. So,
I mean, but that's a really fascinating, thing you just said. But I honestly think the reality is that's just kind of how the way is structured, right? Like you don't know what you don't know, right? There's about 300 million Americans right now, so a large majority just don't know that this thing exists called real estate investing. They just don't know for whatever reason. They're not Googling it. They're watching Netflix all day. We don't know, right? So that structure is most likely going to be there for the foreseeable future, right? So the idea is, how can us put this information out there to those that are willing? Because don't forget, it's a lot of work, right? Those that are willing to put in the effort and have the discipline to bring these ideas to fruition, right? I think that's kind of what we can do, and a lot of people doing that. Rod Cliff, a lot of people are doing that. So we're definitely going to have people that are going to pay for college degrees, and that's fine, because not everybody can be a successful real estate entrepreneur because it's a lot of work. So not a lot of people have that. Share what I tell my friends and my business partners, the level of madness, right? You really have to have that level of like, I can buy like 5,000 units and I'm going to do it. That's a lot. That's like, there's going to be sacrifices, right? And what I say is, in life, there's always a price to pay and there are no discounts. You're going to have to pay the full price.
Yeah, I'd rather do that than pay the full price of, I think, working for 40 hours for somebody else and feeling the pain of being leveraged by somebody is a lot
Mm,
more work than to, struggle a few years trying to figure out how to make it in business. That's just way more painful. But I don't know.
yep.
Everybody, like you said, I guess nobody's focused on the things that we're focused on, right? And we're not,
Yep.
we can't really judge anybody. I mean, everybody's going through life. I believe in spiritual beings and that we all come here with an intent to become better through our what we call lives, right? This time that
Mm-hmm.
we experience on earth in these bodies. I
Mm-hmm.
believe it's so that we can spiritually advance to the next thing, whatever that may be. But let's talk about some other things that I want to know what else you talked about at this conference that you had this last week. It's
Okay.
about mindset, right? So let's go on. Let's go in that direction. I want to hear what else you had to say.
Oh man, I need to bring up my slides and and like share screen and I mean we talked about a lot of things, right? One thing I always like to touch on is, first and foremost, the brain is very important, meaning the brain needs investment. I was talking to you before the start of the show. Yeah, I really believe the most underutilized and most undervalued real estate is 6 inches long, and that's the brain, right? Um, Everybody has one, so we just feel like, oh, I have a brain, so I'm not gonna I'm not gonna sit there and meditate in the morning, try to get creative, or try to I'm not gonna sit in solitude and think about my life. I've got to watch Netflix. I've got to watch the football on Sunday. So why would I take time and talk to myself? That's it sounds cool, like I'm crazy. But that's the problem. The brain needs investment through reading, meditation, right? Self conversations, reflecting, journaling. But we don't do that because, one, we don't know, right? If you don't read books, you won't get this knowledge. You get knowledge from everywhere else, CNN, TV, on the road, at work, from your body in the bar, right? So it all starts there in the mind, right? And the only way that we can win is when we start to access new information and stay open to those information, right? And one thing I talked about is reading, right? Reading, Audible, it doesn't really matter, YouTube, whatever. What reading does, and it's not just, when I say reading, it's not just reading real estate books. Actually, one of the books I just finished, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, it's nothing to do with real estate. It's about life, philosophy, and death, right? And really having that understanding that life is ephemeral. It's really short. When you compare life to recorded history of 5,000 years, we don't live that long. So what do you want to do while you're here? Like you just mentioned, right? With this body that we have and how long we have, what do you really want to do? Do you want to just, like you said, get leverage for 40 years and then have a pretty average pension? Or you really want to max out your brain and yourself to really be an impact and contribute to society? So that's one thing that I really mentioned, and that was by reading. That's a big one. Were you gonna say something?
No, I'm curious about your routine. Like you mentioned, we don't do this, but I don't think you're referring to yourself. You're referring to society. So I'd love to hear about some of the things that you do, some of the reading, some of the habits that you think are important for people to have success, regardless of what they choose to do in life.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. Great question. So, and what one thing I like to say about habits is you're not just trying to create habits and be mindless about it, right? You don't want to create habits and just be mindless, meaning, you wake up, you do this, you do that, and you're just doing it. No, you're creating an habit. They say you do it for 60 days and it sticks. You're creating an habit because you're doing it for an eventual goal, right? You're waking up, drinking that water, or meditating because you want to be more self-aware. So every morning when you meditate or you drink water or you run or you walk or you do a brisk walk for 3 miles, quickly remind your brain why you're doing it. You're doing that walk so your cholesterol numbers are lower. You're doing that walk so you know how to breath when you're playing with your kids. You're doing that walk so you don't have a heart attack when you're 40. Okay. People just say you're doing it, but you gotta constantly remind yourself why you're doing this, right? You're meditating because you can be a better apartment syndication, because you can be a better father, you can be a better, husband. Really tying that, I think, is where the trick happens. So for me, there's a few things I talked about at the event, but in terms of my morning routine, I wake up. Usually, I don't have an alarm. I try to wake up like 4 or 5 in the morning usually, and then I'll go downstairs. I'll drink a bottle of water. That's just kind of cleanse my body a little bit of whatever's happened through the night, and then I drink Chinese oolong tea. That's been they've said it's really good in terms of like basically getting rid of what we call radicals in the body.
Yeah.
So that's why I drink that, and then I drink organic wheatgrass with my shake. This is kind of staggered, not all at once, right? My shake is just like a pretty vegetable shake with strawberries, or I just kind of mix it up, just different shakes right in the morning, and then I'll meditate first, right? It's kind of like with my water, I'll meditate, for like 30 minutes. It could be like 15, depending on which one I choose.
Okay, I gotta stop you, man. I really want to know about the meditation part. This
Okay.
is the section. All of the other stuff is great. The routine is great. The herbal tea, the anti, free radicals, all the good stuff is great. But the meditation, the investment in your mind, what do you do for those 30 minutes? Do you think about stuff? Do you pray from a place of gratitude in order to manifest the things that you want? You pray from a place of gratitude so that you can actually attract those things into your life. What do you do during that time?
I really like that's a really, really fantastic question. In terms of gratitude, that's like my ongoing tactical element that I deploy all through the day. So like I'm having a not so great day, I deploy gratitude very quickly. Like I'm like thankful to be in America. Right. So I do that at an ongoing basis. That's kind of how I stay sane. Right. But for meditation, I do a meditation called taking quiet time. So it's essentially just sitting down in solitude and just following your breath. Right. And then at the end of the purpose of that meditation is to essentially build more neural pathways. Your neurons are basically cells in the brain, and to create new neural pathways. And then after your meditation, you would say, basically, you say your name and then say, hey, whatever it is that you want to imbue or kind of inject in those new neurons that you've constructed, which happened when you were being quiet and still. Then you say, I want to have X amount of whatever. And then, so that's the purpose of that meditation. And it's just called taking quiet time. There's one that I'm doing right now. It's a little bit longer. It's about 39 minutes. Satipatthana. And that's similar to taking quiet time as well. Ray Dalio, I read his book, Principles, is a billionaire. That might get people's attention. And he does something called transcendental meditation, and that's just kind of like you repeat like a sound in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't tried that, but he's a billionaire and he says it works for him. So that's one as well. I mean, essentially, there's a ton that you can choose from, but I really like taking quiet time because of the kind of building new neurons in your mind, and then you can like inject them with your goals at the same time. So at the end, I would say my goals in the morning, but gratitude is all through the day.
There's a book and an audio that I actually studied pretty in depth by Wayne Dyer. It's called Meditations for Manifesting, and it talks about japa meditation. It's from India or the Middle East, and you make this sound while in the morning. I believe it's you go and you say this sound out loud, and it's the sound of it, and then you think about the things that you want to attract from a place of you already have them, your ideal soulmate or the perfect car, the perfect business, or the perfect scenario, whatever that may be. And then at the end of you do this in the morning, right at sunrise, and then at nighttime you do a gratitude meditation where you go, instead of saying you say om, and then you resonate that out, and you don't pray about the things that you want that meditation. You only pray about the things that you're grateful for that you already have. And doing this process over time, I actually manifested my wife because there was so much passion. I don't know what percentage of the audience believes in spirituality or the ability to manifest from your own thoughts, or if you can do it with or without taking action. It's something that I used to even, I mean, that and like auto suggestion and writing goals. You have to have that little edge of writing your goals down and then repeating it to yourself and saying it from a place of passion and gratitude. You
Yeah.
believe in this type of philosophy?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think we don't pay too much attention to things that are super intangible. And because we're humans, right? We think, why should I wake up every day and meditate? Right? It's the same thing of like, why should I go to the gym and do a 3 mile walk every day or 5 mile walk? Because we can't see we're intrinsically um um we intrinsically look for quick gratification, right? We don't like delayed gratification, right? So that's, I feel like that's a major thing for society, is like, why should I do all this kumbaya, whatever things that, because I don't see the result, right? If I drink an ice cream right now, so if I drink something nice, I can feel it in my mouth. It's beautiful, but meditation, I can't really feel it. So, I think that's why a lot of people don't do it. And I think that's what separates different people from, like you said, performance indicators don't grow on trees, because we actually take the longer way, right? Almost the harder way of waking up early and doing all this. I mean, what you just described to me, I haven't heard it before. So, that's something I will check out. Right? I'm curious, right? So I think all of that, like, all those attributes is what really separates, all of us, right? The ones that are doing so well, not just financially, but just in their lives, right? With their wives and their families and friends and things like that. So yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing I was going to mention was, which I talked about, was like happiness. I talked about happiness. I talked about goals. I mean, a big one is, I kind of asked people, I'm like, would you want to be in the 1%ers of America? And everybody's like, yeah, definitely. I definitely want to be in the 1%ers. But I wasn't referring to the Jeff Bezos club. 3% of Americans actually write down their goals. 3%. And check this, 1%, right, of Americans actually rewrite their goals. So isn't that fascinating? And I just knew about this this research when I was preparing for my event. And I think about a year or so ago, I would wake up in the morning, and part of my routine was I'll write down my goals 30 times, or 29 times, sorry, because that's the number of lines I have in an A4. And I'll just write, I want to, I'll write it again, write it again. I can't remember the book I got it from, but I'll do that every morning. So, to me, in retrospect, it makes sense, because I was doing that without even, I didn't know about this statistic, but those are the things that we can do in our lives it does make sense, right? If you look at that every single day, your brain will eventually be tricked. Like, I can do this.
Works.
Like, it does work, right? So, and when we get really technical in terms of like how to do real estate and syndication and all these things, you obviously have to know the mechanics, but I feel like the intangible piece is equally, if not more important than, the technical stuff. So that's what I was trying to do. And I kind of finished up with, what I believe are the two precursors to success, right? And one is self-confidence, right? You have to be able to like instill that confidence in yourself, right? That you can't really go get that from Walmart.
I want to talk about that. Tell me more. Like, how do you do this? I was talking about this with somebody yesterday, that I gave myself the authority to create a podcast on raising capital, even though I have a limited experience. I've raised like $650,000 on YouTube, but I was like, I have to do this. And he's like, well, he didn't ask me, but some other people might ask themselves, what authority do I have to write a book on a specific topic that you may not be an expert on? And I can tell you one thing is that you give yourself that authority, right? Mm-hmm. You give yourself permission to become a syndicator, to become a business owner, to become a dancer, to create the body of your dreams, to attract the person. You have to give yourself permission to do those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So of course there are a ton of ways that you can kind of instill confidence, but I think a pretty low hanging fruit is knowledge, right? But before all this though, right, the mindset piece is very important for that too, right? Because you can get knowledge, right? And I talked about this in the beginning. Is it inspiration first before education, or is it education before inspiration, right? So you can have, somebody that is very motivated. You're like, how you doing today, Jeff? They're like, I'm just happy and motivated. And you're like, well, what are you going to do? I don't know, but I'm just happy. And so it's like, you just have a motivated idiot, right? With no goals, and, they're just really happy all the time. On the other, end of the spectrum, you can have a couch potato, right? Who is very smart, very intellectual, but they're just not motivated. You just kind of just want to watch Netflix all day, right? So for me, it's not really inspiration or motivational mindset first, and then education second. It's kind of like this fast, which is how my event was structured, is mindset and then education, right? It has to be kind of almost is sequential, but at the same time, right? So you've inspired that person, but then they have the knowledge to go out there and actually do what they're supposed to do, right? And I feel like some of the events, you hear like all this like sleazy. Our event was like completely free, but not the free that you see. Like you go there and they have this like people at the back trying to get your credit card. We didn't do any of that. We didn't sell anything to anyone. That's just not our style. We just basically went out and just provided knowledge. That was it, right? And I think people appreciate that approach, and people understood what we're trying to achieve, which is just empower people, and then they can do whatever they want with that knowledge. But to go back to self-confidence, getting that knowledge, understanding that it all starts here, and making sure that building your self-confidence is a daily thing, right? And that's from listening to content that helps you a ton mentally, right? Because we all know you can do the stuff if you're already good up there, right? You're not giving it, you're not having any negative self-talk, right? You understand that because you're constantly you're investing in the most important real estate every single day, month, year, right? You're following that process. And I think for me, the other part is discipline, right? You have to have self-confidence, and there's research behind this, and discipline, right? And that is what would get you pretty quickly to success, right? The ability to instill self-confidence and be like ridiculously disciplined, right? Through, a variety of ways. You have a task list every day that you go through it militantly. You have a morning routine that you go through militantly. Like, this is how people get successful. It's, they act like there's really no secret. That's just what you should try to do every day, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly.
So the process of you coming from the United Kingdom, you were from London, and I think, where did you say, Bristol? No, I can't even remember where you said. But are you a U.S. citizen at this point?
I am a U.S. citizen. Yes, I am a U.S. citizen. I actually got that, I don't know, maybe like a year or so ago, like my actual blue passport, which most folks listening to this, obviously born here, they're like, what's the big deal? Like, they don't even have a passport because they probably just travel with their license. But that's a pretty huge deal, in my opinion. Like I said, I was obviously born in Nigeria, and, kind of having that perspective of living on 3 continents. And obviously it just gives you a different perspective, and setting up businesses in 2. Just gives you a different, I see, for the most part, opportunities, right? Somebody that maybe was born here might just see issues, right? Institutional racism or whatever, but I just see like, wow, it's America. It's wow, let's go. So I have a different perspective for sure.
Is that more from the Nigeria perspective? Because you can have a lot of success in England, in London too. There's lots of people that have crazy businesses. There are probably lots of real estate investors that are doing things that I haven't.
Yeah, my friend was one of them. Remember my friend in Dubai, right? Yeah, absolutely. I think that, definitely comes from that. And I think just from living on different parts of the world and interacting with different people just really gives you, I guess, a unique perspective. It's almost hard to describe, but you just kind of see things from a different perspective. And I think it makes you really humble as well. And just kind of open to ideas, basically. Yeah, and I travel a lot too.
I lived in Mexico, in a third world country, and different parts of my life. I think at 25 years old for a year, and then at like 2013 for a year. I met my wife there. She's going through just getting the residency process because she can't legally work right now. But like in a few months, we should have those papers that'll allow her to work and travel, to go back and forth. But I can't wait for her to have that residency. You know, she loves the United States. She didn't realize, I think a lot of Mexicans, you know, because they see Trump or some of the other things, they actually have a level of despise or jealousy, or they just don't want to have anything to do with it. But then they don't realize that a lot of the people that live here are like genuinely good people, and that we don't subscribe to all these things that we're surrounded in, you know, kind of like they're not all corrupt criminals, you know, but maybe some of the people that they surround themselves in society have that stigma. But yeah, I think a lot of people, and the reason that I asked you about it, I spoke with a passive investor yesterday who's in, I think, like 15 deals. His wife was from the Philippines, and
My wife was
and
born in the Philippines.
he lived in the Philippines, and he has a different global perspective of the opportunities here in the United States as well. You know, and I was able to connect with him a little bit because I also lived in a third world country, and we appreciate more the opportunities that exist, and we're more humbled by living in these situations. So yeah, I wanted to find out if you thought that was
Yeah, and we were in the Philippines in December actually, and that's a really good segue actually, because while we were there, we kind of went to some remote parts of the Philippines. We drove about 5 hours and went to some other parts as well, close to the city. And you know, my wife and I were open to go back there next year. We're doing something called the Vacay Pledge, where you know that area that we went to, we realized that a lot of folks that just didn't have like good dental hygiene, right? So we're looking to go back and kind of help educate and like give out like, you know, toothpaste and stuff like that, and like toothbrushes, and just kind of bring a dentist, even maybe like in a mobile truck. We're looking to do that. So I think you're right. You know, I obviously went to some parts of the Philippines, and you just get that really different perspective of like, yeah, you have that global perspective as well of life and like kind of what you have. So, but we all still get into that funk sometimes, and then that's where you have that, you deploy that gratitude of like, wow, I'm one of the luckiest 300 million people on the planet, you know. But of course, like I said, if you live here and you maybe haven't gone to those parts of the world, you don't really have that benchmark. You just think, well, it's, you know, the political system is bad, you know, everything is, you know, they, you know, whatever it is. But when you have that perspective, you're a lot more humbled, just naturally anyways.
Yeah, that's so cool, dude. So you didn't realize, but we're gonna have to cut this short. But you invited me to come on your podcast, and I haven't even talked about any real estate on this show today with you. And I don't know that we're going to on the next show. But what I can say, even though we got to cut out here because I got to call at 10 a.m., we can actually continue. I'm going to be on your show in like 2 weeks. And then maybe we can continue talking about this stuff, the spirituality, the meditation, the mindset.
Let's do it.
It's so much fun to talk about, you know. And
let's do it.
It's so much fun. Maybe we can talk a little bit about real estate that time too, man. It's been a pleasure to get you on the show. Let me get your contact information so I can share that with the audience. What's the best way to find you? Tell us about your website.
Sure. So best way is Instagram, Oladantis, Oladantis. And of course, you can find me everywhere else on the internet. I'm pretty ubiquitous. Website is Invest with Ola. So investwithola.com. And that will kind of redirect you to the dwelling website for sure.
Very cool, man. Well, I'll catch up with you in about 2 weeks. Other than that, man, thank you so much for coming on the Capital Raiser show. It's been a pleasure to have you. I'm so glad that like I got to find out a little bit more about who you are as a real person, because you see these people on LinkedIn, right? And you're like, I'm kind of interested to find out about that person, but then you don't know anything about them until you actually connect and get on a phone or a Zoom call in our case. So it's been a pleasure getting to know you.
No, my pleasure, Ruben. Pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much.
All right, cool, man. Well, with that, we'll sign off.